Okay, doing a couple last minute problems before we take the communications test. And this is one of those box problems where we know that we're going to be cutting out a corner of each corner of this 36 by 24 rectangle. And we didn't know how high it was, so we called it X, how high the box would be. And then we figured out the volume in terms of X. We found the volume formula. You always start with that and the goal, knowing what you're going for. I want volume in terms of X. And then here's the key question you have to always ask yourself. What was wrong with this formula? What was wrong with it in the first place? What were the things that needed to be replaced? L and W and H. So we needed to figure out L and W and H. And once we knew those three things, we could just plug them in. And then we look at the formula again and make sure that it's only got X's in it. And it does, so we're good. All right, so that's one practice problem. Let's do another. This time we'll do your classic rectangle question. Okay, a rectangle is 5 times as long as it is wide. 5 times as long as it is wide. Make a sketch. I want to know the perimeter in terms of the width. Perimeter in terms of width. All right, I'll pause for a second. Let me try that one. Okay, here's what you should have done. First of all, a sketch 5 times as long as it is wide. Here's a mistake some people make. They go, here's how long it is, and it's 5 times longer than this, so this is going to be 1/5 L. Even though it's a correct drawing, it's bad because they're asking you for something in terms of the width. If that's your goal, perimeter is something in terms of width, you better dang well have a W in your problem. I know you would have on this one naturally, but sometimes you have to look at that and say, if they want it in terms of width, I better have a width in my drawing. There's W, and this is 5W. Okay, now perimeter. If this is the main formula, I go back up here then, and write the main formula. 2 lengths plus 2 widths. So perimeter is 2, and what do I need to get rid of? Here's the thing, the key question. What's wrong with my formula now? It's all about that L. I need to get that out of there. And the L, I look over here, is 5W. Is my answer done? You can tell only if the teacher has told you whether they want you to simplify it or not. If I had to simplify it, then I go 2 times 5 is 10W plus 2 makes P equals 12W. And is it in terms of width? Yes, it is. Now I'm going to ask you one that's, I know almost everybody had that right. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. I'm going to make one that's tougher. Similar though. Okay? An equilateral triangle, which means all the sides are equal. I want you to tell me the area in terms of a side. That one's not as hard as I was thinking I would make it, but then I stopped myself from making it insanely hard. We're still only on our second problem of the day. An equilateral triangle, I want to know the area in terms of a side. I'll pause for a second while you try that one. All right, should be your thinking process. You have an equilateral triangle. You try to draw it so all the sides are about equal. Okay, and then I'm going to call each side S. S is kind of a terrible variable because it looks like a 5, but you just have to know that it's an S throughout. All right, now, again, good to have like a system. I'd always write at the bottom what your goal is. Okay, my goal down here is I wanted the area is something with S's in it. And that means it's in terms of S. Okay, then I go to the top and say, okay, well, then the area formula is 1/2 base times height. And the question you always ask yourself, what's wrong with the formula the way it is right now? It doesn't have any S's. What does it have? Base and height. So I need to know base and height. And once I know those two things, I'll have it. Well, I do know the base from my picture. I can tell that. Base is S, so I'm almost done. Base is S times the height. I still don't know the height. If I knew the height, I'd be done. So that's where it actually requires a little bit of work. Okay? So I'd like you to tell me what you did then to figure out this next step. Somebody must have. What'd you say? Excellent. And we didn't know what this was. What'd you put for it? I'm curious.
I put 8.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so like, and I had X's, but like, I guess S.
Uh-huh. S and X's can be interchanged, sure. So this is an S. I'm going to call it an S. You can go with X if you want.
So it'd be like 1/2 S squared.
Okay, so you're going A squared plus B squared equals C squared. I better find room to write that. So I agree with that start. Now, what did you use for A? Was it so like this? And I hope you didn't use S. What did you use?
Or 1/2.
1/2 S. Awesome. That was right. Now, if you didn't put it in parentheses, you had another chance to screw up right there. Because if you just said 1/2 S squared, and you don't have the 1/2 in parentheses, it's not going to get squared. We want it in parentheses. This A is like an empty parenthesis you drop something into. Same with B. Okay, so now how about B? What'd you put in for that?
Just S.
I don't think so. Because A and B are these sides.
Oh, duh, it's an H.
Okay, so then H.
That's what I had.
Okay, all right, good, good, good. I'm glad you knew what to do even if you said it wrong. How about C then?
Then S.
And that's S. Because this is, C has to be the hypotenuse, right? So S squared, good. All right, then if we can, so like you get lost in these things. What are we trying to find? We wanted B, which we already knew, B is S. We wanted H. This is the one we're trying to find. We want H alone. Okay, so we solve for H. So now I'm going to subtract this from both sides. So I'm going to say H squared equals S squared, and then I'm going to put minus all of that. There we go. Now, how do I get the squared off of there? Just do square root. Square root. Square root. And now H is alone, and it's equal to all that. So this would have been a super easy question if we didn't have to figure out H, but we did. So no, you cannot cancel out all the squareds there because of this subtract here. Remember, I can do the square root of 16. I can do the square root of x squared. Those are all both fine. I can simplify both of those. I cannot simplify the square root of 16 minus x squared. You cannot take the square root of that. It does not work. You might think it's just going to be x minus 6 or 4 minus x, but it's not. And it's not 4 plus x either. It needs a middle term to be able to find a square root of it. Yes?
Couldn't 1/2 S simplify to 4 S
So
squared?
could we multiply this out? Is that what you're asking? Yes, you could multiply that out.
And then wouldn't you get 3/4 S square root of 3/4 S squared?
Okay, I haven't simplified it yet, but my point was what we should not do, just to clarify, I didn't say we couldn't simplify it. What I'm saying is we can't just go cancel, cancel, and cancel. That would be a common mistake that people make, okay? So don't do that. Now, can we simplify it? Absolutely. And it depends on whether or not on the test we would ask you to simplify this one. And this one is easy enough, I think we would have said to simplify it. So let me finish the deal here. Area equals 1/2 S times all of this. Square root of S squared minus 1/2 S squared. And would I have expected you to simplify that? Yeah, I think I would have. Okay? So then where do you start? Well, the S squared can't be simplified, so I leave that alone. This can be, though. And that becomes 1/4 S squared. So now I have A equals 1/2 S square root of s squared minus 1/4 s squared, or s, okay, I'm going to go 1/4 s squared. Now, 1s squared minus 1/4 of an s squared makes 3/4 of an s squared. I don't know if we would have made you simplify that one. That's a pretty tough one. Square root of 3/4 s squared. And then, in the end, some of that you can even find the square root of. You can find the square root of 4 easily, but you can't find the square root of 3. And you can find the square root of s squared, but it still won't simplify all the way out and get out of the root. So there's an answer. This is an answer. The one in blue was a good answer that's most likely would have been good enough, because we probably wouldn't have made you simplify that one. All right. Oh, question. Yes.
Could you have, like, simplify it to the square root of 3/2?
Again, you can simplify this further, but it's going to have a square root left in it. So yes, 1/2 s, and then I could have left it with the square root in it, but then your s's would have to go with this. Yes, you could have kept going. Okay. I'm feeling like I'm getting sucked into a vortex of a lot of time that nobody's going to care about, because I wouldn't have made you do one that was that hard. So, all right, let's move on to a different kind of problem. That'll be better use of our time together. One last one I'd like to do together, and then we're going to give you time to work on that worksheet. Actually, I need to do 2 more. There's a lot of stuff, and the whole front page of your review worksheet was about order. I got to make sure that you get this, because it's like one of the easiest things, but it's easy to screw up too. 4 square root of 2x plus 1. Okay, this is a parent square root, but it's been moved a lot and stretched a lot. 1, 2, 3, 4 things. And if you just say to do them from left to right, you'd be wrong. Tell me the correct order. And again, I always want you to start inside. If you do it perfectly correct by starting on the outside, I would have to give you credit. But please, for your own good, you confuse yourself. Every example I've ever shown you starts on the inside. What are the 4 things, and what are their names, too? You have to be able to say it right. Vertical versus horizontal. You can't say flip, you have to say reflect. Stretch versus shrink. Get the wrong word, you get it wrong. Okay, if you start on the inside, there's only 2 choices, that or that. And you should ask yourself, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, is there any parentheses in there? No, there's no parentheses inside of this. Is there any exponents? No. Is there any multiplies and divide? Yes. So they would normally be first. That 2 would normally be first. So it's not first, because we've got to do it in opposite normal order. So we're going to start with the 1. So we go up. No, not up. That plus 1 is not up. What is it? Left. 1. Raise your hand if you started it right. If you start right, it's like 90% of the time people finish right. Because that's a hard one, because you want to do this first. All right. So now we actually do the 2, which is not a horizontal stretch. It's a horizontal, because it's on the inside, you know, high vo, horizontal on the inside, vertical on the outside. It's a horizontal shrink factor 1/2. Remember, it seems like it's twice as wide, but it's not. It's half as wide. All right. Then we go to the outside. And these last 2, again, can be a little tricky for people, because they might be confused about which one. It seems like maybe this 4 is the adding one. It's not. That 4 is being multiplied here by this square root. That's a multiply by 4, and that's an add 3 being done backwards. If we put it at the end like this, plus 3, it'd be a lot easier to see that that's a plus 3. So the multiply, since we're on the outside, we do things in the normal order, and multiplies come before adds. So that 4 should be next, and it's a vertical stretch factor 4, and the last thing is up 3. How many of you had it perfect? Okay, and that's a good third of you didn't. So feel free to practice that. Ask me questions about it if you want, but that order stuff's really important. Okay. I'm going to throw you a curveball once, see if you catch it. Four things. Careful, do it in the right order now. Okay, start on the inside, right? So on the inside, I have this 2 and I have this 3. And the mistake people make is they think, okay, so the choice is times by 2 or add 3. It's not. That's not what the choice is. The choice is, should you do the parentheses or should you not do the parentheses? That's the real choice. Okay, so our parentheses, aren't they normally first? So then they can't be done first. The stuff in the parentheses cannot be done first because we're on the inside. Things go opposite. So this time we have to do the 2 first. I see a lot of people changing their answers, and I understand that's a really common mistake. But think about it as a parenthesis, and you'll get it. Parentheses are normally first, so they can't be first. The 2 is first. So this is a horizontal shrink factor 1/2. Spelled factor wrong. And then the 3 left. Then we move to the outside and multiply. Oh, question? No. Well, no. If I was going to multiply it out, I'd do this, but that's not the question. The question isn't to multiply it out. The question is, in what order would you do these transformations? And the first thing you would do is look and see this parentheses, so that transformation has to be done first. That doesn't mean multiply it out. That means take your square root thing and make a horizontal shrink with a factor of 1/2. All right, the next thing that's done is this 3, okay, and that was 3 to the left. Now we're on the outside. That is a high-vo, vertical on the outside. That's a vertical. I encourage you to not tell me whether it's over X or Y because you're likely to mess it up. That was number one thing I marked wrong last time we took this test, was people got their X and their Y confused, and they reflected over the wrong thing. If you stick to vertical reflect, I think you'll get it wrong less often, because it's vertical on the outside, and I think most of you get that. If you try to go through and go, okay, what does vertical mean? It goes like this, and it's over the X-axis. It is over the X, but so many people said Y last time. Don't do that. Tell me vertical or horizontal. All right, last thing is number 4 is this thing right here, and that's up 1. Nobody gets that one wrong. Okay, any questions on that? All right, then the last kind I want to do with you, I lied to you. I said I was going to give you a lot of time to work, is one off of your worksheet for today. So everybody grab your worksheet for today. If you haven't got one, ask me in a minute, and I'll get you one. But okay, a lot of you. So I can find my stash of them. I'll pause for a second while I do. Okay, I'm helping you with the worksheet for today, which is called, by the way, Communications Assessment number 1, Review. And we're going to problem 10, which is on the back side. It says a square inscribed inside a semicircle. I hope you know what inscribed means. Inscribed means that when you draw it in there, it touches on all four corners. That's probably not the official definition of inscribed, but that's what's going to happen here. All right. Now, know what your goal is. The area of the square in terms of the radius. Okay. First of all, I could draw my radius like this, but that would be dumb. Think about it. The radius comes from the center of the circle, right? And again, drawing it like that would be dumb. Where should I put it so that it matches up with the square? Yes? Yes, where it touches. That's a good place to put the radius, because that way it combines both the circle and the square. You've got to find that spot where to draw the diameter, or to draw, in this case, a radius. All right. So now if that's the radius, I can definitely call it R. All right, now let's do some other labeling. I want the area of the square in terms of the radius. Area in terms of radius. How many of you already had that on your paper? Awesome, you've taught you something then. Now that you know what your goal is, it's not as hard. You know you want the area formula, so I got to have the area formula for the square. Well, a square is base times height, but since they're the same, I know some of you probably said base times height. Some of you probably said side times side, because they are the same, right? Okay, or side squared. All right. So what's wrong with my formula as it is right now? It doesn't have any R's, but it's got a what? An S. So I'm going to take that S out of there. And really then that means I need S equals. Do you see how that means I need S? Because if I knew what S was equal to, I could stick it in there and I'd have my answer. It would be area in terms of R. So if this is S, this is a key moment. What's this right here? 1/2 S. Now, once again, rectangles and squares often end up turning into triangle questions. So here's my triangle. It's got sides R for the radius, S because that's the side, and this was a little tougher, but it wasn't too hard. It's half of a side, so it's 1/2 S. Seems like I need some other formula, and on triangles, if they didn't give you the area, which they didn't, then it's probably a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I'm going to go write that down. And A is, I'm going to pick that to be A. You could have picked the other one if you wanted, but A is 1/2 S squared plus B is this one, S squared, equals C. C has to be the hypotenuse, R squared. Now, again, if you were lost on which one you're supposed to solve for, you got your advice right here. You should say off to the side like that, I need S equals. That'll remind you you're supposed to solve for S. So if I'm solving for S, I need to put this all together. This one's going to be 1/4 S squared plus an S squared equals R squared. And that's 1 1/4 S squared. Instead of writing 1 1/4, I'm going to put 5/4 S squared. And then, if I'm going to clear my fractions like my advice to you has been in the past, you know, if I'm trying to solve for S, S equals what? I want to get S alone. I'm going to multiply by 4 everywhere, times 4 here and times 4 here. That 4 cancels that 4. I have 5S squared equals 4R squared. Then I'm going to divide by 5 on both sides. And the 5's cancel. S squared equals 4R squared over 5. And I just got to finish with a square root. S equals square root of 4R squared over 5. Whew, that was the hard part. Now that goes in right there, and you have it. All right. Make sure you do your homework. Check it. Remember, you don't have to, they're not all like that. You'll just have to get that kind right if you want to get an A. Have a good day.